All right. Welcome, welcome. For those who are on, do we have more people coming in or is everybody in from the waiting room so far? All right. It looks like we're in good shape. People are coming in. Good evening and happy Wealth Wednesday. My name is Lisa Lickert and I am your trainer this evening. And we're focusing in on retirement security in an uncertain world. This is a conversation and this is all about you. I have a lot of words and a lot of slides, but what I want to make sure happens is that everybody here asks the questions as they come up. Pop them in the chat. Let us know what's going on. We have somebody monitoring the chat so we can answer your questions as we go. And like I said, we're here to serve you. So your questions matter and please do not hesitate. We'll also have a couple of polls as we go through this evening. And those are designed to really be thought-provoking, but also to get our mindset in the place that we need to as we talk about various topics this evening. Without further ado, let's talk about some secrets about money. The first thing we want to talk about this evening, because of our topic, is really about wants and needs. This is good to do at every stage of your life and every age. You're never too young or too old to really do deep dives into what your needs are and what your wants are. And people typically don't have these answers. So don't feel badly if you're struggling to define these and know what these are for yourself. Now, I had an advisor years ago, probably more than 20 years ago, ask me what health I wanted to be in retirement. So she didn't ask me what my wants and needs were. She wanted to know what I wanted my health to be. And I thought that was a silly question at first, but it's a very powerful one if you think about it, because I went on the assumption that everybody wants good health in retirement. But if you're really not focusing in on making that health good and you being able to be active, your wants aren't going to be traveling or maybe some hobbies that are more physical. So it was a really great way to set the mind and make some decisions about wants and needs as it related to retirement. And that's really your foundation. You want to start with asking yourself those really difficult questions. And to be honest, as life changes and as we get older, those answers can get a little bit different. First polling question tonight. So, what is most important to you? This is a hard question because all of these are likely important to you. But on the polling question that you're going to see on your screen real soon, I'm hoping you're going to see it on your screen real soon. Pop it up, please. The first polling question.
Lisa, we're going to move to the second one, please.
Well, what we'll do instead is we're going to ask people to drop in the chat what your answer is on this polling question. So we're having some technical difficulties this evening. And so the question is, what is your most important? So A, is that guaranteed income that lasts a lifetime? Is that protection against inflation or rising cost? Is it avoiding big losses in those market with those downturns? Or having control and flexibility over your plan? Which is the most important? Going to open up my chat just a little bit here to see if I can follow it closely since our polling's not working and not on our side. Guaranteed income for life looks like it's leading here. We do have a few folks wanting to keep some control over their plan. Okay, thank you for answering. Those that were able to drop it in the chat, I really appreciate it. It is very helpful because I will be focusing in on some information that might be helpful to you as we talk this evening that hones in on that guaranteed income component. All right, so next, here are the key risks in retirement. These are probably not surprises to anybody logging in tonight or watching from home on YouTube. We have longevity, we have inflation, we have the distribution timing, and we have medical and healthcare costs. Those are the main risks in retirement. And so as we're talking about retirement in an uncertain market, these are the four main, and you want to absolutely have a balanced approach. So you want to have a plan that really addresses all four, not heavy in one area and light in the other. So longevity is a risk. We all want to live as long as we possibly can, right? So if you think about how Social Security was established, it was really established for people after they're done working to retire at around age 65 and live 2 to 5 years. But we all know that people are living much longer than that. And so a healthy, long life is something that we all strive for. And we're in retirement for 20 plus 30 years. And so if you think about how long people are living these days, 50% have a chance in a couple, 50% have a chance to live to over 90 years old. Isn't that amazing? And so longer you live, the more money you need. And so outliving your income is a real thing. I'm going to double check the chat where it seems like we're doing okay. So careful planning is really the only way you're going to be able to manage through the longevity piece. Certainly, we can debate all night long about Social Security benefits and what the levels are and if they're going to be around and all of those types of things. But if we're wanting to be able to cover our expenses and maybe some of those needs and not lean on family or government assistance, you really need to have some careful planning. And that's what we're all about tonight. So what is the secret? What's the real secret of guaranteed income for life? I think a lot of people that we talk with and we work with are shocked to understand that they could take information or accounts that they currently have, accounts that are more traditional that are built for growth, and convert them into accounts for income. Let's give an example. So a 401k or an IRA, an old one from a past employer. This is the most common that we find that people have. They didn't know what to do with it, so it's just still hanging out there in the old account and doing whatever it's doing. People don't understand that there are financial vehicles and there's options for them to roll that money in to plans that provide a little bit more oomph to them and help provide what we call that individual pension plan. And that's repositioning where you are not starting over. Now, you can absolutely start over and really think about and build out plans that do have a guaranteed income component. But 9 times out of 10, it's not about doing more. It's just repositioning what you currently have. And these accounts, a lot of them are growth annuities, and they're not your old annuities that you probably heard of from your parents or your parents' parents, where they're high fee, low growth. These are long-term annuities that are growth annuities, and they come with some great features that really help you with that balanced portfolio, not just providing that guaranteed income. It prioritizes your gains, and what that means is that your floor is 0. So you might have a cap strategy where you're not going to gain exactly like the market, but you do not have those drops in losses. And when you take a look at a 20-year period, a capped strategy will always outperform an uncapped strategy. That's what these plans will do for you. Another thing, it limits the drag you have on your account from fees. So if you think about a 401k or an old IRA, you have fund fees that are baked in there that cover administrative costs and managing costs. In a growth annuity, for example, you don't have those fees. And so your money is working harder for you. And there are components of annuities where you have a growth annuity and then you convert it over to what's called an income annuity, and you get paid for life. Means you can never outlive your income. That's the secret. People don't know these are out there, and they don't really understand that they can work with the money they currently have and reposition. All right, now we get to talk about something else that's really fun, which is inflation. So we've had a little bit of cooling with inflation, but I think we can all agree that inflation is a thing, and your purchasing power is very limited over time and as the years go on. One of the favorite quotes that everybody I think a lot of people are familiar with, I shouldn't say everybody, is that when you pay $15 for a $10 haircut that you used to pay $5 for when you had hair, which I think is the funniest part of that quote. That is just a true reality that we live, and you have to plan for it. I got a giggle out of this one. Now, I hope that my retirement is 45 years if we're talking about inflation and retirement, because we're comparing 1980 to 2025. But it's 5.5 times more expensive. When you talk about a Honda Accord, and that just really kind of smacks you in the face when you think about inflation. So how the heck do we plan on inflation, and what do we do? Why does it matter? Why does it matter? When you're in a fixed income, especially with the Social Security benefits, it is very challenging to manage through inflation. And so you can't necessarily make more in retirement, can you? Because you're not bringing in income. You have to rely on your retirement plans to do all of that work for you. And so one of the best kept secrets, let's keep on the track of those old 401k IRAs, is that money can work for you to offset inflation impact. And there's a couple of ways it could do that. I'm going to give you an example to be able to wrap your arms around this concept. We have a client that had rolled over her 401k recently into a growth annuity. That particular account was structured specific to her needs and wants in retirement. And we chose to recommend a growth annuity that had a bonus at rollover. Now, this bonus was a very high bonus. It was 23%. She paid 95 basis points, so less than 1% for that bonus. Day one, she had $44,000 more in her account than she did with her 401k. So think about that. Day one at rollover, that bonus. Now this one had a fee. Not all of them have fees. She paid the fee. She started off $44,000 more than what she had the day before. And then compounding interest was working on her behalf, right? That's pretty sweet. So you're already ahead. And then she's compounding on that higher amount that was rolled over with that bonus. So letting that compound work for you, right? And one of the many ways to do that is with those bonuses where you're starting off at a higher place. But another way of letting that work for you is where you are focusing on those gains and mitigating those losses. And how you do that is inside of a growth annuity. Again, you get those gains, but the floor is zero. So you're not dealing with those market losses, and compounding is working even more for you in those cases. And then we mentioned the pension style income. There are riders and there's different treatments to financial vehicles that will give you a pension style. Companies that used to pay pensions for life and you never ran out of your pension. That's a thing of the past for sure. But these secret financial vehicles, I kind of giggle. They're not necessarily a secret, but nobody talks about them. They act just like an individual pension plan. Okay. All right. So another risk that everybody has to think about would be your distributions. So in distributions, one of the things that is the biggest concern is that sequence of returns. So you have this in every account that's out there in the open market, your IRAs, your 401k, your brokerage accounts, is when are you taking those withdrawals? And if you're taking those withdrawals in years with losses, that could be a huge dip in your retirement payouts and in your income. So that's another reason for a balanced approach. You want to make sure that your money is spread across multiple platforms. So when or if we don't have crystal balls, losses happen, the time you need to take withdrawals, you do not have such a huge impact on your income. So how do you do that? Well, actually, let's illustrate what it could be. So scenario A shows that it's the same amount, $500,000, both in scenario A and scenario B, you're withdrawing $30,000. So what's the difference? The timing, the sequence of returns. In scenario A, look at how long the money lasts, because there's 2 years of growth before the losses. So the sequence of returns is much different than if they were withdrawing just a few years later when the following few years had losses. So think about that. So no one has a crystal ball, No one's saying put all your money in one bucket. But if you have your money in one bucket, look what could potentially happen to you. So you need to make sure that you spread that risk. Again, that distribution risk. And there are many strategies to do just that in order to protect. 13 years in scenario B, and what is it, 24 years in scenario A. You can see how significant that is on your income in retirement. And again, I just covered actually this screen and the screen prior, just to kind of revisit. It really talks about that sequence of returns. The thing to think about is you don't have a crystal ball. So the only thing you can do is have a solid strategy where you have a balanced approach. You don't have all your eggs in one basket as you are taking withdrawals in your retirement. All right. So again, this is called Real Secrets of Money. So we always talk about secrets. And tonight we're really trying to keep examples very similar, so you're not all over the place. And but there's many options out there. And the focus that we're wanting to have this evening is really talking about that compounding interest. And I don't think we're ready for the poll, so we may need to pull the poll off the screen if you guys are seeing that screen. Sorry about that for this evening. We're getting close, though, to the polling question. But the secret that most people miss is those market losses. What happens is when you're recovering from a loss, you are not experiencing any gains in those years, right? It takes several years to recover from those losses, but those years of recovery, just to get up to break even, you don't have gains. And so by the time you're break even and then you're starting to really kind of get ahead, you're still not technically ahead because you still have those years of you're trying to get to break even. So when you do the actual calculation, can you pull the polling question off the screen, please? I can't exit out of it. So, okay, I'm going to go back to the slides. If you guys have any questions,
sorry, Lisa, I already take it.
Okay, it's still on my. Okay, thank you for that, because it's still right on my screen and I didn't know if everybody else could see that as well. Okay, so if it's not on every screens, we're good to go. All right, so a lot of people don't understand that when you do have market losses, it takes quite some time to recover from those losses. So again, the balance approach is extremely important because you need those accounts of stability to help level out those accounts with peaks and valleys in those years to break even. And so controlling those losses controls your income, obviously. And so when you withdraw without those losses and you still have that compounding happening within your accounts, your income and your compounding work together. And that's what you really need to have in the diversification of your portfolio for your retirement. So a lot of things that we're talking about tonight clearly is financial security as it relates to your retirement uncertainty, and we're really doing deep dives into the risks. But I don't want people to think that all your eggs should be in one basket. A balanced portfolio is extremely important. But these secrets of protecting your principal against losses, having compounding without the losses, as well as financial vehicles that have bonuses. These are all available to everyone. There are no thresholds or barriers for these options. Okay, there we go. Okay, now we got the poll. So understanding healthcare costs is really important for us to the next risk that we're going to cover this evening. And so just, do we have the poll on now, or are we using chat again? I'm sorry, my screen is like so strange right now. Do we have the poll?
Yes,
awesome.
We are using the poll.
Yay. Okay, we're using the poll. And so A is you're just starting to learn about healthcare costs, especially in retirement and later in life. that you know the basics is B, but you need some guidance. Maybe C is you've done some planning, but you're not really sure if it's enough planning. And then D is you got it covered. You think you need to maybe fine tune, but you've got some things covered. All right, so people are putting their answers in now. I'm just going to wait for a few more seconds here as folks get their questions answered. All right. I do believe we have everybody's answers, and we're coming in at C, where you've done some planning, but you're not really sure if it's enough. So we'll focus in on that as we go through this next section. Thank you very much. Here. All right, so medical risk. So let's just kind of focus in on Social Security benefits. Again, we're not going to debate whether it's around when you retire or it's not, but I'm just going to walk through some numbers for you to put it in perspective, and then talk about some opportunities or some options to think about as you are solidifying your plan or maybe verifying if your plan is strong enough, okay? So taking a look at Social Security benefits, let's say for the last 35 years, you've averaged around, you're ready for retirement, last for 35 years, you've averaged around $85,000. So that's going to put you with Social Security benefits around that $2,000 to $2,500 mark on a monthly basis. So for purposes of this evening, let's say $30,000 a year at that $2,500 mark. Well, if you think about Medicare premiums are going to take a little over $4,000 away from that income, and then you average in what the retiree spends on medical expenses, that's about $7,500 if you're looking at that 25%. So a little over $4,000 out down from your $30,000, and a little over about $7,500 down from your $30,000. That leaves you 18 grand. So you have 18 grand a year or $1,500 a month. So just simmer on that a little bit, okay? And that again is just Social Security. Whoopsie, I got crazy. Did I get crazy? Oh, I got crazy. There we go. Okay. So if you think about that $18,000 and you say, okay, I'm going to be in retirement for 20-ish years, look at your healthcare costs. This is just your medical expense of over $165,000 or around $165,000. Doing the math, it's simple math and it's very real. So that's what we're really kind of focusing on. How do we take care of that? And then on top of those healthcare costs, then there's some long-term care. Now, we all want to be healthy, but I think we all can agree there will be some time where we need support in our care. That could be home assistance. That could be a long-term care facility. It's going to be a little bit different for everybody. But when you look at the facts and you kind of look at what happens in most cases, you're going to at least have minimal needs. You might have some moderate needs. And so how do you cover for those expenses? And so just showing some nursing home cost in $100,000 a year. So how do you pay for $100,000 a year? Now, notably that if you have assets, you do have to liquidate those assets. So let's say you are placed in a long-term care facility and you have to sell your house in order to pay. You have to sell your cars, maybe other assets that you have. In Medicaid, has to see that you have exhausted your resources, and there is a look back period to ensure that happens before you even become eligible for Medicaid. And then when you become eligible for Medicaid, obviously, then it only covers a certain portion. So that means then there's certain facilities that you'll be eligible to live in, and other facilities that might be nicer for you to live in that you won't have access to. So how do we prevent this from happening? So we prevent it from happening in various ways. There are many financial tools to be able to help protect you during this time. Now, the most commonly known is that long-term care insurance. Absolutely, that's still around. However, the years of it being cheap are long gone. So it does have a nice price tag to it. And so obtaining that long-term care earlier in life is going to benefit you to keep those costs low However, those premiums then would need to continue for many more years. And so you have to think through that cost benefit. Also, with long-term care, you have to consider exactly how you use it. You have to, in many cases, provide receipts, and you don't have those flexibility. It is there. It works extremely well for people. The point we have to make sure that everybody's aware of, it's about you and what you need and what your goals are. So long-term care could absolutely be that solution for you. But there's also other financial vehicles out there, and this is the secret, that really have some baked in features. So when you're talking to your financial professional, make sure you're talking about things like living benefits. These are benefits that pay out of your policy while you're here. It usually has a death benefit component to it. It usually does have a cash accumulation component to it. And these types of plans can work for you in multiple ways. Living benefits being one of them if you have chronic care needs, accident needs, those types of things. There's also funds that these funds can offset different expenses. So you don't have to use them for specific medical expenses. You might be able to use it you might want to use it to pay your rent versus your medical bill. So you have that flexibility. It might be for assisted living. It might be for medical related expenses. But these are payouts that go to you so you could live the life that you need to. Now, sometimes that doesn't cover everything, so you really have to think through that plan and that strategy for sure. There's also things that happen in the guaranteed income world where you have a component or a rider that multiplies that payout. If they're called well-being, they're called multipliers, they're called a bunch of different other things that helps you in those times that you need long-term care, and they double the payout for a period of time so you can cover those expenses. So the secret is there are many options, not just that long-term care option to consider to be able to manage through those healthcare expenses as well as those medical costs. All right, this one's a funny question to me. So this is our next polling question. I always laugh about that. If you stop working today, so we have different age categories on the Zoom today, and I'm sure watching on Zoom as well, YouTube as well. If you stop working today, how confident are you that your income would cover your needs for the next 25 years? A is very confident, you have a solid plan. B is somewhat confident, but you have some gaps or questions. C, not so confident, you don't have a plan, or you haven't thought that far ahead. So do we have the poll running? We do. I think we do. We think we do. All right. We have a few more people to answer here. Wait just a couple seconds. All right. So somewhat confident, but you may have gaps and questions. Absolutely understandable. That is the top answer this evening. And quite frankly, that's why we do these education sessions. They really just get you started. Maybe you can take away some nuggets and some information. Maybe reach out to us afterwards to have a conversation specifically about your plan. But everybody's different. And we want to always take people through education because education is power. So you're getting from that somewhat confident to that very confident. And while everything may not always be buttoned up, you absolutely have a solid pathway and you're feeling good about where you're heading. Okay, so how to manage these risks, right? We talked about 4 different risks in pretty serious categories with significant expenses tied to all of these risks. So the key here, again, a balanced approach, making sure you have a strategy and a plan. I think everybody, even if you're not a friend of your money, we've heard of that 4%, right? Where the 4% is you're taking 4% from whatever retirement account you might have saved up. And then the following years, you are adjusting for inflation. And the thinking is that growth will kind of replace and help fund. But we put in praying in parentheses because this cannot be, again, all eggs in one basket. And that's your only plan of action. There's absolutely, diversification of your portfolio. And the 4% rule does work in part, but it can no longer run the show for any of us in retirement. And I hope that we were clear about that in this evening's conversation. So the planning steps, you just want to make sure you are becoming one with your expenses. What are those wants and needs? You want to make sure that you understand what essential expenses are in retirement and what those voluntary expenses are and what they mean to you and your quality of life. You're always going to be reviewing and adjusting. So whoever you decide to work with, you want to make sure that you're meeting with them at least once a year and you're taking a look at everything. I don't care if you're 20 years old or you're 65 years old, you're going to be meeting with somebody at least once a year or looking at your plan at least once a year, asking the questions, retooling, reevaluating. You have to always be adjusting. Life happens, right? I mean, I think in any given week, 3 things could happen in our lives that just kind of turn us upside down. So things happen all the time. We need to make sure that we're rebalancing things. We need to make sure we're adjusting goals. We understand exactly what the concerns are. Things happen in our family, things shift. We definitely need to update beneficiaries. There are blended families these days, and there's a lot of complexities as it relates to law and beneficiaries. So that's something that's extremely important to adjust on an ongoing basis. You want to make sure that you are doing everything you can possibly do month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year to keep the eye on the ball, as I put it. And you want to match your income with your needs. Easier said than done. I totally get it. But when you have your finger on the pulse and you're reviewing your plan on at least an annual basis, you are always going to be able to march towards that goal with confidence. So just to kind of hit on this, I kept talking about balance, portfolio, and diversification on all these kinds of things. And so this just gives you some visibility on your mix. You know, some of these are flexible, some of these are meant to stabilize things. So you've got your Social Security. Again, pensions, kind of a thing of the past, but they could certainly still be available. I know government employees and things like that still have pension plans. You've got your retirement accounts, you've got your brokerage accounts, your IRAs, your 401ks. You have annuities. We touched on those a couple of times tonight. You mentioned the brokerage accounts, your bonds, your savings accounts. That could be a traditional savings. That can be a high yield savings account. If you are fortunate to be able to invest in real estate, obviously you have real estate, rental income coming in. And then some people do work for a lifetime. They work for a part-time job because they want to keep busy. But in many cases, people have to cover all of those risks and expenses that we just discussed. There tends to be a gap. And so you want to make sure those income sources do fill that gap. There's shortfalls that many people are going to be facing. Maybe that too many eggs are in that one bucket or basket, I should say. And so filling that financial gap a lot of times can be done by those more financial secured options versus those high risk options. Just heard Tom speak in California in January, and he's a big fan of guaranteed lifetime income. In his talk, I think he said he has 12 annuities. And so he opens annuities often. There's flexible contribution annuities he was talking about, and you know, a couple of them we actually just put a client into that has 11% bonus with no fees on the index investments and no fees on the bonus. And so he talks about opening these up, taking advantage of these bonuses, compounding interest. Many cases there's guarantees in growth, not just payouts, and he's certainly obsessed with it. And I love the don't worry, retire happy. So any more secrets to share? Really, this is about you. So everybody has a little bit of a different money mindset. Everybody's starting at a different place. Everybody's going through different things within your life. And so you just start now. It doesn't matter where you're at, just start now. Maybe you add to what you're already doing. Maybe you explore some other options. Maybe I shared something that piqued your interest this evening that you would like to explore and learn more about. but you need to understand you and what's right for you and what your money, they talk about money personality or money mindset. Just know exactly you and what your needs and goals are. You already hold the key to guaranteed income, most likely. This is a secret that most people know. We talk to people all the time with those old 401ks and IRAs, using the example we did tonight. And they're amazed at what their money can do for them, and they find it fascinating. I did as well. So my strategic partner, my business partner, Shirley Liu, absolutely love her. She changed my life about 5 years ago. When I shared with my financial advisor, he's a really close friend, Morgan Stanley. I was sharing with him what Shirley had shared with me and the potential for a couple of my accounts, and learned from him that he wasn't able to touch what she was able to do for me, and wished me extremely well. And so I found that fascinating, because I thought I knew what I needed to know. And here, even working with a financial advisor, I didn't know. So love the fact that we hold the key to that guaranteed income piece. Compounding interest is incredible without interruptions. I mean, I think the math is very easy, and it's essential for you to have in your portfolio. So something you absolutely want to become more familiar with. Know that there's bonuses out there. There's principal protection, and the structure actually matters. It's not about products. It's not about anything that's transactional. It's really about repositioning your money and understanding the structure and how the structure can work for you, not just today, but 5-10 years down the road. And it's about progress. It's not about chasing returns. You definitely need to have funds that have that growth, that higher growth without caps, for sure, for diversification. But the portion of those funds in those types of accounts, they're going to be changing as your life changes, for sure. And it becomes less about chasing returns, and it becomes more about maximizing your money for that lifetime income. All right. So whoever invited you here today, I hope you say thank you. Thank you. I learned a lot of nuggets of information, found it interesting, piqued my curiosity, want to know more, want to learn more about what I can do to protect, and in certain times, my current money, but certainly my retirement planning. So everybody's situation is different. It takes a one-on-one conversation, for sure. And so no obligations. We do this because we lead with education. At the end of the day, if we do our jobs and we share as much information as we can, so you are empowered to make decisions, 9 times out of 10, clients come to us because they want our help. With that, I'm Lisa Lickert. I thank you so very much for being on this evening. I am happy to open up the chat for questions if we have any. If not, we can end today. All right. Do we have anybody in chat tonight? Like to ask some questions? Did I do just that good? Or we're just that tired and had a long day? Which one do you think it is? All right, everybody. I'm seeing some wonderful comments in the chat. Thank you so much once again. Talk soon.